Welcome to the most studious committee in the Nevada State Legislature, the Assembly Committee on Education. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assembly members De Silva, Dahlia, DeLong, Flanagan, Hanson, Hardy, Hunt, Koenig, LaRue Hatch, Mosca, Orntlinger, and Chair Torres Fawcett.
Please mark Assembly Members Koenig and I believe Assembly Member Hanson is now here, but please mark Assembly Member Koenig absent, excused, and present when he arrived. Welcome to the audience here in Carson City. It seems we have a packed room joining us, and I know we have an overflow room, so thank you for joining us. And thank you for those of you joining us in Las Vegas. And thank you to our subscribers on YouTube for following along on the internet. We appreciate you for joining us today. As a reminder, please silence your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. For those joining online, please be sure to mute your microphone, and when you are speaking, I apologize. For those joining online, please be sure to mute your microphone when you are not speaking to minimize background noise. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state and spell your name and affiliation, if any, for the record. Then turn the microphone off each time you are done speaking. Please provide all handouts to the committee staff. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting, even if we do not agree with another person's position. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please do not view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. Public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes. In addition, the public may submit written testimony to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. At this time, we do have a pretty busy agenda today. We are going to go in order, so we will hear from our presentations before we go into AB 217. As a note to members of the public, AB 217 testimony will be limited, so we will do 30 minutes in support, 30 minutes in opposition, and 30 minutes in neutral. At this time, we will go ahead and begin with a presentation from the Interim Chancellor of the Nevada System of Higher Education. Whenever you are ready, Ms. Patty Charlton. And I'll take a point of privilege because I've actually known you since I was a student at CSN. So thank you. It's great to see you here. It's very full circle.
Thank you so much. For the record, Patricia Charlton, Charlton, Interim Chancellor, Nevada System of Higher Education. And Chair, you were a wonderful student, by the way. So good afternoon. It is a pleasure, and I am grateful for the time today to share this State of the System of Higher Education presentation with the Assembly Committee on Education. This provides an opportunity to take a moment and assess where the system and our institutions are in terms of our core mission, producing college graduates. This presentation has two primary focuses today. First, a look to reflect on how far we have come over the years with the legislature's support, and second, to identify where there is additional work to be done, because all of you know there is always more work to be done. And so all of this today is going to be framed under the mission of the Nevada System of Higher Education as prescribed by our Board of Regents. So as you can see, our mission statement is very, very long. This is the formal mission that has been adopted by the Board of Regents and is codified in the NSHE handbook. It's a long mission statement, but at the very heart of this is the primary intent. We graduate students, particularly in support of the state of Nevada. There are other elements that are very important, such as our research component, and we are very proud today to have not one, but two R1 universities. And the focus on building the system's research profile in recent years has been clear, and we are happy to come back before this committee and provide more information about the research work. But today, again, I'm going to focus on our primary role of educating and graduating students. And this presentation really is basically a story of how far we've come, but again, also focuses on the work that we must do in the future. So as I talk to you today, I will use the NSHE strategic goals as a framework. And as such, we will evaluate our progress in the key areas of access, which is measured by enrollment, student success through the graduation of students, and our workforce contributions as well. So let's start with access. Access refers to the opportunities that students have to participate in higher education. The most fundamental measure of access is enrollment, as it is a direct measure of the number of students that are participating. Our institutions have a very clear objective: to increase participation in higher education. So let's take a look at how we're doing. So I'm going to start with looking back over the last 50 years, and probably many of you weren't here 50 years ago, but this graph shows post-secondary enrollment per 100,000 population for Nevada. That is the blue line that you see in front of you. And for the U.S. is the red line. This includes enrollment for all degree-granting institutions that report through IPEDS. And for Nevada, that means it also includes private institutions as well, or those private institutions that report to IPEDS. We have more private institutions today than we did in 1970, and we have more institutions within the system as well as we did 50 years ago. Ideally, we would like to see the blue line and the red line come together, or even ideally the blue line above the red line. This is absent that ideal, we are doing better as a state relative to the nation when it comes closer together, as I mentioned, which you can see happened in 1980 and in 1990, when we tracked very closely to the national average. It's an interesting comparison given that we were a much smaller state at that time, but still managed to enroll more students per 100,000 population. So now let's look closer at the NSHE institutions. In prior years, you've seen variations of this slide before. What it shows is that the system reached our high peak of enrollment in 2010, as Nevada came slowly out of the Great Recession. During prior periods of economic downturn, enrollments in post-secondary education historically have increased, particularly at our community colleges, where the opportunity to retool skill sets or seek new pathways was often sought. What's a little different for a historical note on the Great Recession is, as a nation, primarily that is generally accepted as occurring between December of 2007 to June of 2009. However, Nevada, given the unique nature of our industries, was a little slower to recover and essentially was still in a recession in 2010. As is common, again, during an economic downturn, many individuals return to college for training, and hence you see that high mark in 2010. Another year that's important is 2020, where that was the peak of the coronavirus pandemic, and our community colleges, similar on the national front, were impacted more greatly with the decline in enrollment. So now I'm going to focus a little bit more on the sector level, our 2-year institutions versus our 4-year institutions. All of the enrollment data in this presentation does come from IPEDS, which does not go back to 1970, and so that's where our baseline picks up in 1980. This table shows the institutional enrollment that corresponds to the sector level in the prior slide. Going back to the system level peak in 2010, the universities are all larger today than they were in 2010, and in the case of Nevada State University, it is significantly larger today than it was in 2010. In part due largely to it was a new institution at that time and has realized significant growth. To quickly recap, what we have talked about so far is that the universities exhibited extreme resilience following the recession, and Nevada State has had steady and strong growth since the recession and up to the pandemic. It is a different story and has been a little bit more challenging for our community colleges as the pandemic had a significant impact on them. That said, all of our community colleges are all showing signs of enrollment increase coming out of fall 2024, and so that's a great sign. And now let's move on and look at the enrollment of our historically underrepresented students, which falls under our strategic goal of closing the achievement gap, which really means increasing access and student success for our populations. We're first going to begin by looking at NSHE relative to the nation in terms of the distribution of enrolled students by race and ethnicity. The blue bars before you represent the distribution of NSHE students, so if you add them all up, that should total 100%. And the same can be said for the red bars, which represents the nation as a whole. You can see clearly from this data that as a system, our enrollment of underserved populations, particularly Asian, Hispanic, and two or more races exceed the nation. But now we'd like to look also at what we look like in terms of our state's population. This pie chart before you is a distribution of Nevada's population from the state demographer. It is important to note that NSHE uses the race and ethnic categories as defined by the federal government and used in IPEDS reporting, which includes the 2 races or more. The state demographer does not have a 2 or more category, and the state demographer also combines Asian and Pacific Islander, which are 2 different and distinct categories for purposes of IPEDS. From that said, from this you can see that as of 2023, Nevada is essentially a 50-50 majority-minority state, which differs considerably from NSHE. Here you can see that NSHE crossed the 50-50 line in 2014, and as of today, we are a minority-majority system with 64.5% of our student population coming from historically underrepresented populations. This slide compares the race and ethnic distribution of the system from fall 2014, when we became a 50-50 system, to fall of 2023, where today we are at 65-35%. It is clear from this that the greatest gains in enrollment distribution have been from Hispanic students, followed by the 2 or more category. But the slide does show that we have additional work to do. To summarize that prior slide, in the last decade, the greatest enrollment increase for historically underrepresented populations occurred in Hispanic, Asian, and 2 or more categories. But in an era when we moved well into the minority-majority status, we have seen declines in American Indian, Alaskan Natives, Black or African Americans, and Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islanders. And unfortunately, these are the categories that we already had historically low data or participation in the past decade, and it has become an even smaller proportion. That is a challenge, and there is much work to be done. The good news is this is the last slide on enrollment, and we've covered a lot of ground so far, and I am respectful of my 15 minutes too. Our 4-year institutions are all doing well or holding steady in terms of enrollment. They survived, and in some cases like Nevada State are thriving and coming out of the recession and the pandemic. Our community colleges, again, have struggled but have shown great resilience and increased enrollments through 2024. And in fact, in the FY24 fiscal year or academic year, Western Nevada College right here in Carson City grew the largest. And finally, the system has moved the needle on the enrollment of our historically underrepresented student populations. But again, we have work to do for American Indians or Alaska Natives, Black or African American students, and Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islanders. So now let's move on to student success, our core mission, graduating students. Let's start with educational attainment, and this is the measure of the educational level of the state's population. Similar to the enrollment of students per 100,000 population, ideally, we would like to see the blue line above the red line, or at least see them come closer together. But that said, this is a very difficult needle to move. Nevada has followed the nation in terms of a growing percentage of a population that has a bachelor's degree or higher. And in 22 years, we've gone from 18.2% to 27.3%. While we lag the U.S., we have made amazing accomplishments in this area. The most often cited measure of student success is an institution's graduation rate. That said, the graduation rate is not necessarily a good measure for all of our institutions. The standard IPEDS graduation rate is the percentage of first-time, full-time, degree-seeking students that graduate within 150% of normal time. So for a bachelor's degrees, that's 6 years. For an associate's, that's 3 years. And for a certificate, that's 1.5 years. The problem with this rate is that the cohort, again, is only tied to the first-time degree-seeking student and is more prominently represented at a 4-year institution than a community college, where the traditional student is more likely to be part-time and may also be a transfer student, either criteria of which would exclude them from being counted in the standard IPEDS rate. That said, more students at universities are full-time, so the standard IPEDS graduation rate tends to be a decent measure for them. In today's presentation, I'm going to focus on the standard IPEDS rate, but we're also going to look at the outcomes measures for community colleges, with the goal of providing you with the most accurate picture possible for our improvements in student success, because over this last decade at NSHE, we've made amazing accomplishments. So let's start with the universities and look back at the graduation rates over the last 20 years. Increasing graduation rates is more challenging than simply graduating more people because they have to fall within that cohort to make a difference in the institution's rate. The improvements for all of our universities is quite clear. UNR's recent jump to 62.4% now aligns with the national average, and UNLV's graduation rate has increased by 12 points. That is significant for our largest institution within the system. And NSU's graduation rate more than doubled in the span of just 10 years. For the community colleges, it is a different and dramatic picture. However, it is important to keep in mind that these cohorts, or the denominator in the rate of calculation, are very small to the overall population of students attending, because again, they're only counted at the graduation rate if they are a first-time, full-time degree-seeking student. For the cohort used in the 2023 graduation rate, the students accounted for in the denominator are only 7% of all students that were enrolled in the institutions. So that means that over 90% of the community college students are non-traditional and not included in the IPEDS cohort. But as you can see, all but one of the institutions are essentially at or above the national average. A decade ago, that was not nearly the case. That said, this is not the best measure for community colleges in terms of success. So let's take a brief look at our outcomes measure. So you've heard me reference the IPEDS rate probably far too many times, and it does really truly do a disservice to the community colleges in that it does not capture the majority of the students. The outcomes measure, however, essentially expands on that cohort or the denominator of the IPEDS rate by essentially including part-time and transfer students that are not included in the IPEDS rate. It tracks those students over a longer period of time, up to 8 years, and then also identifies those students that are still enrolled either at that institution or at another institution. So this chart shows a stacked bar that actually shows the 4, 6, and 8 years of students and those that are still enrolled. You can see from each of our colleges that this broader approach presents not only a more accurate picture, but shows a significant percentage of students that are graduating compared to the standard IPEDS rate that you saw on the previous slide. And that is based on the smaller cohort. So finally, I'm at the last slide on student success. And looking at the raw numbers, this should make you very proud of those students that are graduating. These are the students that are joining our Nevada workforce. It compares the number of completers from 2011 to 2012 to a decade later in 23-24. A 62.3% increase is not bad at all. And if you notice, NSU is 200%, CSN is 112, and TNCC at 118. Pretty incredible. So what you can see from these slides that we are better today than we were at serving our core mission of graduating students, but there is still much more work to be done. And so I'd like to take a look now at how we are supporting the workforce of Nevada. And going back to our mission, again, our objective is to graduate students to support Nevada's workforce and economy. And so with that, 2 areas that this legislature has been very focused on, and we have been happy to partner with you, is in the areas of teachers and nurses. When you go back 2 decades ago, the legislature has made known its desire for more nurses. And even in the 2023 session, we received additional funding to support nursing program expansion. And the same thing for teachers, and the state is always, always in need of teachers. And she responded to the demand through substantial increases in graduating teachers and nurses, 66.2% and 63.9% respectively. But the big question is whether or not they stay in Nevada when they finish. So before I go into the specific details of this slide, I do want to highlight that there are some limitations that we have with data. We know today if our graduates are working in Nevada the year after they follow graduation, but we don't necessarily know whether or not they're working in their specific field. And that's because the state's wage records determined by DETR include industry codes, not necessarily occupational codes. That means that we know, for example, if a nursing graduate is working in healthcare, but they may not actually be working in the field of nursing, and the same for a teacher. They could be in the education field, but not necessarily in the classroom. But despite that drawback, it is important to know that a significant percentage of our students who graduate with degrees in education and teaching and healthcare remain in the state and immediately start working following graduation. 85.8% of educators, and 81.2% in nursing. So going back to our mission really quickly, sorry, I went ahead of myself. We are contributing to an educated and trained workforce, and no doubt that we are meeting that need of our aspect of the NSHE mission. I'd also like to add that having the data to back that statement up is significant too. And all of this workforce data and all of this enrollment data can be found on the NSHE website. We encourage you to go play around with our dashboards. It's important that we have accountability and transparency for not just legislators, but for the community and for others at large. And so hopefully this presentation leaves you with a better appreciation of what has been accomplished in the last decade, more graduates than ever before, and significantly increasing those graduation rates in raw numbers of graduates. But it should also give you a moment to pause and appreciate that our community colleges in particular are at a very difficult moment and have really struggled with enrollment challenges, feeding that pipeline to graduation. While our universities have achieved R1 status, the community colleges have shown signs of struggle, but they are doing amazing work across the state, and enrollment is up. So that, Madam Chair, concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions that the committee might have, and we do have representatives from each of our institutions as well, should you like to hear or address any questions to them as well.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for going through that information. So as the Chancellor stated, we do have representatives here from the individual institutions. If you have very specific questions, I know we have a number of questions. Members, can you just raise your hand so I can kind of scan? Looks like, well, I'm just going to go around. We'll start with Assemblymember Mosca, then we'll do a little circle and see how many questions we have. But we'll go ahead and begin with Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Chancellor, and all of our higher education institutions for being here today. Because there are so many questions, I'll just ask a quick one. You know, I always have questions, and I appreciate you always answer them. But being on that funding formula committee, I know that this is a policy committee and not a budget committee, but I think it's always important to bring up. Could you just share the work that's happening with the adequacy study and what's the purpose of that? Thank you.
Certainly, for the record, Patricia Charlton, and thank you, Assemblymember Mosca. Just as a status report, so as we came to the conclusion of the funding formula study, one of the takeaways and a charge from that committee to the Chancellor and our system administration team was to perform an adequacy study and equity study. That work is in the process of wrapping up, just about to get the final report, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with the members of the Higher Ed Funding Committee, as well as the Legislature, Board of Regents, and Governor's Office. So we're almost at the finish line.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Assemblymember Ortlicker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the good work you're doing. With the change in federal policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion, how are you responding to make sure we do keep our faculty, staff, and students aware of these important goals?
Thank you so much for the record, Patricia Charlton, and thank you, Assemblymember Orlicker. So first, we have had a great deal of information coming out through executive orders received through the system and through different agencies. And so as I highlighted, we're very proud of our majority-minority status, and it's important that we support all of our students. As executive orders come down, our legal team does review those. We also have many institutions within our system that are recognized HSI status and MSI. And so at this point, we continue to support all of our students, and we are ever mindful of potential federal impacts that may come to us, because we are very, very dependent on grants to support those students and all of the student work that we do. So we are also keeping the legislature informed of any impacts and changes that we have.
Thank you. Assemblymember Hardy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here and giving us this report. I think overall it seems positive. We've made a lot of great strides in many areas, especially since the recession and COVID, so I think that's great. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the enrollment you talked about. You said the four-year institutions are slowly increasing enrollment. Community colleges are still struggling. Do you have any idea of, like, if someone leaves, like the community college or doesn't complete a 4-year institution degree, where they're going? Are they going and getting good jobs? Or they, is that specific to Nevada since we have a lot of good gaming careers and things like that? Is that what's happening? Or do you know, or they're just not working or things like that?
Certainly, for the record, Patricia Charlton, and thank you, Assemblymember Hardy, for that question. So first, I think it's a little bit of both, and so we can do a little bit deeper dive. One thing that we know, especially with our community colleges, is often students are snatched up for jobs before they can finish their degree. But we also know that across even Southern Nevada, we have 300,000 individuals with some level of post-secondary credits but haven't finished their degree. So those are some of our low-hanging fruit to make sure that we can re-engage them. We also are very sensitive that cost is a factor. And we know that, like other things, the cost of education is increasing. And so we often do lose students to a transfer a little bit sooner. Maybe I'll just give an example, perhaps they're not finishing their degree at Western, but they're transferring to UNR sooner. And so they may, one, still have transferred to another institution, be in the workforce. So some of that we have to do a little bit of data. We would know if they are working here in Nevada, but we would still have some data limitations. And so we can certainly come back with some additional follow-up information.
Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was about to pass. I think Assemblymember Hardy's question addressed my concerns about the workforce and the continuation when people don't finish at junior colleges. So thank you for the data. I'll look for that from you.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have a couple of questions which I'll combine into one about the graduation rates. One is, do you have the graduation rates based on race? And then the other, do you have graduation rates for people to graduate based on college or degree or department that are working in Nevada versus working in another state?
Okay, for the record, Patricia Charlton, and thank you, Assemblymember DeLong. I'm going to ask our Associate Vice Chancellor, Renee Davis, to come up and assist with that question on a level of data that may be available. Renee?
For the record, Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, Renee Davis. So we do have the data definitely on graduation rates by race and ethnicity. That is on our dashboard. Unfortunately, I don't have them in front of me and I'm not quick at pulling them up, but it is readily available on our websites. And then in terms of graduation by program and institution, we do have some data for specific careers and occupations, primarily for those career fields that are in high demand in Nevada. And so we have some actually quite detailed data on our website in terms of where the graduates are coming from and that first year, if they're still in Nevada, first and third year. So we do have some, but it's for specific cohorts.
Certainly, for the record, Patricia Charlton, we'd be happy to provide a further breakout for a specific period of time on those different graduation rates as well as those program areas of interest.
That'd be great if you could provide that to the committee. Thanks.
Assemblymember Lewer Hodge.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation today. So my question as a K-12 teacher, as a K-12 teacher, I always wonder how we are preparing our students for higher ed or wherever they're going after we graduate. And so I just wondered if you could speak to remediation rates. I know that wasn't in the slide, but are we adequately preparing our kiddos for success in your institutions?
Certainly, thank you. And for the record, Patricia Charlton, I'm also going to defer this question to Associate Vice Chancellor Renee Davis, as I know this is a very high area of interest for her.
Renee Davis, for the record. Thank you for that question. So it's a little bit of a complicated question to talk about remediation because we have changed the way we handle it. Effective in fall of 2021, a Board of Regents policy went into effect that required all students, and this is primarily talking about math and English, to go directly into the college level course, either with or without some support to get them through the course. And basically that is due to the changing ways that we're approaching students who need some additional support in the classroom, rather than having them go through a gauntlet of remedial courses, which in the past could have been honestly in math as many as 5 additional courses before they get to the college level. Now they go right into the college level, but of course with the support they need in order to be successful. And so we're seeing some really good success rates. We're definitely seeing, we've got a dashboard that looks at students who complete their math and English gateway courses by the end of the first year of enrollment, and those figures are substantially improved from the prior approach of remediation, and that's for all different groups of students.
And also for the record, Patricia Charlton, and again, Assemblymember Hatch, I think the other benefit that we have is all of our institutions are also participating in concurrent and dual enrollment. That is also making a difference where we're actually reaching in and getting high school students engaged in higher education sooner and being able to hopefully address some of those areas such as English and math, for example.
Thank you. And I appreciate you explaining the model. I know you might not have the numbers in front of you, but do you have an approximate percentage of those students that need that additional support, or is that something you could provide to us after this?
We'd be happy to provide it following this meeting today. So sorry, Patricia Charlton for the record.
Thank you.
Can I just brief follow-up? Thank you. I appreciate that because we did have a discussion too about many of our students graduating but not necessarily being proficient. And so I would really love not only the numbers that need the support, but the numbers that are then able to move on successfully versus those that are still struggling because maybe they just don't have those underlying skills. Thank you, Chair.
Vice Chair De Silva, correct? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Chancellor, for your thorough presentation. Before I get to my question, I just want to give our newest university, NSU, a shout out because based upon your presentation, their numbers looked very robust, and it's a great celebratory point, I think, for us as a state. But my question also is about dual enrollment. I want to give you kudos, NSHE, with the growth of the program. But my real question was about the rurals. How is NSHE engaging with the rurals and making sure that our students in the rurals also have access to those dual enrollment programs? Thank you.
Certainly for the record, Patricia Charlton, and thank you, Assemblymember De Silva. All of our institutions are participating, and so I know we also have President Kyle Dalpy here today. He supports a large rural component. Would be happy to see if Kyle would be willing to come to the table. And then also we have Great Basin College is very actively engaged in dual enrollment, and they use primarily the dual enrollment model just because of just the vast service area. President Dalpy.
Thank you. Kyle Dalpy, president of Western Nevada College. One of the reasons dual enrollment works so well in the rurals is because we go to the high schools. It's not a campus model where there's a high school on our campus like you might see with other institutions because our population base doesn't support that. So for example, if we put a high school at Carson City campus, Carson High School would lose a significant number of students. But going out into the rurals, we deploy instruction out there with our instructors or using a qualified high school instructor. And that has provided the access for those populations. In addition, not speaking for K-12, but we found that there is not a lot of maybe AP certified teachers to teach college level classes out there. So the dual enrollment fills that gap as well.
Thank you. Assemblymember Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for being here and for the good work you do. And I'm grateful that you mentioned the rural component of dual enrollment. I'm a fan of it anyway, but particularly I can give you direct feedback that in my district and several of those rural counties, this has been a real vital outreach for them, and so it's greatly appreciated. I did have, I went ahead and went to the NSHE website that you mentioned, and very usable. I appreciate that. And so I don't necessarily expect an exact answer now, but maybe just some follow-up later. I noticed because when my colleague had asked by race, you could go, but there's different ones, and I clicked on non-resident for the graduation rates, and it looked like non-residents tend to be at the upper percentile of all the different categories. I was just curious why that might be so. I think I have some personal opinions of that. But then it does drop. There's no tracking after 2022, and I was just curious why that was.
For the record, Renee Davis. So in terms of the non-resident, it's actually a very tiny cohort. It's an artifact, that category is an artifact from the old IPEDS reporting, and so there are very few students who actually fall into that category. It's actually not a separate race and ethnicity category. So that's why it looks good, I think, because it's such a tiny number. And in some cases in those dashboards, if you put your cursor over that, you can see the number that's included in the cohort. It may not be for that specific item, but we can definitely get you more information on that. Oh, and then in terms of the 2022, it's really just a reporting lag. So the information gets reported systematically by the institutions to IPEDS, and then IPEDS has to run their processes, and then once it's published, then we pick up those final numbers and bring them back into our system. So we try to keep those as up to date as we can, but we have to wait. We're kind of at the mercy of IPEDS.
Assemblymember Flanagan.
Once again, thank you, Madam Chair. I hail from the southern portion of the state, so I know for that area of our state, it's a very unique, non-traditional community when it comes to education, and I think that may speak to the state as a whole, and you've painted a really good picture of the diversity numbers in terms of enrollment and the impact. But what I'd like to also get on record is how age plays into academic performance in the state in terms of how long it takes students to complete courses. If you could speak to that, just how age affects the performance in terms of when they go into, whether it's community college or a four-year institution, how long it's taking to complete. Is it work-related? Is it that they start at a later age? Because a lot of times we work and study. So if you could talk about age.
Certainly, for the record, Patricia Charlton. Thank you, Assemblymember Flanagan. So we can certainly get some additional information. First, that may differ by the type of institution that they may be attending. Many returning adults probably are starting at a community college where they're also working full-time, and so it's taking them longer to get through that pathway. We've also seen over the years a drop in the percentage of our students that are in that non-traditional range, being 24 to 40 years old. We've seen a drop in that, and that has a concern for us, as that's typically been an area where people would come back, retool, and even then go on to their bachelor's degree maybe a little later in their age. But typically we have found that those that are at a little, not the traditional 18-year-old to 24-year-old are probably going to be going part-time. They're supporting their families. They're working at the same time. And so it does take a little bit longer for them to complete. But we'd be happy to get additional data that we can on the average age to, or the time frame to completion, depending on that age group, if we can provide that.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. And I had a question that is going to build off my colleague's question in regards to dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment programs. I'm very familiar with what those programs are, but I'm hoping that you can give a little bit of information to my colleagues, and then I might have a couple extra questions about if you could just explain what those programs are and what students we're serving.
Certainly. So we have primarily two areas. Concurrent enrollment is typically where that course is occurring in the high school, and dual enrollment typically is one that's occurring at the college or the university campus. Our goal, and we have been working very closely with the Nevada Department of Education, our goal is that every student that wants to participate in this area has that opportunity. That cost is not a factor. We have across the system established a statewide rate that is applicable based on a university or the community college for concurrent enrollment as well as for dual enrollment. And so again, we're working with them. We also have, working in concert with the superintendents across the state and the school district and our higher education institutions, we have a work group working right now called Align and Shine, and really it's to bring all of these things together so that again, any student that wishes to participate And it's not necessarily for every student. Not every student is ready to start taking that college course while they're still in high school, but we want to ensure that there are no barriers and that primarily they can be successful if they're entering into this area. Because the last thing you want to do is have a student graduate from high school and find that they have not the best grade on their transcript before they even get to the college campus. And so we're working on the student success factor, we're working on continuity across the state, and ensuring that we have access to all that want to participate.
Thank you. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about, and it might be appropriate for the institutions to come up too, like how the institutions are specifically working to expand these course offerings throughout the state of Nevada with a special emphasis on Title I communities, because my understanding is that a lot of the Title I schools have had a really big challenge getting these courses offered because some of the burdensome requirements that institutions have placed. We know that in, these Title I schools, oftentimes you have teachers with less experience, newer teachers. And so how are we making sure that those course offerings are still available and that schools have what they need? I mean, and to be clear, I know that there's currently no state funding for this, so schools are pulling out of their Title I dollars or other funds to pay for it. But how are then these institutions supporting the schools in providing these courses?
Certainly. So for the record, Patricia Charlton, I think it would be best to also have the institutions come forward. So I don't know if CSN or UNLV, UNR would like to come forward. But I will say that one of the things that we are trying to do too is to make sure that we have standards. We know that there have been challenges I'm just going to put it on the record, in instructor qualifications and ensuring, because we do also have, as higher education, we also have accreditation standards that we have to meet. So we are also trying to mirror to the best that we can. One of the gold standards is NACEP accreditation, which is specifically the National Association for Concurrent Enrollment Programs. So we're working on that level to get to that point where we can have standards, but also, again, making sure that we are not limiting the access for students. And so I don't know if CSN, UNLV, or UNR would like to come to the table as it pertains to Title I schools.
Thank you very much, Madam Chancellor. Madam Chair, thank you. Members of this committee, I want to thank you. I'm Dr. Lawrence Weekly, College of Southern Nevada. One of the things that we've been trying to do at our institution is not wait for the students to come to us. We go out to them. For example, this past Saturday, we had a preview CSN day where we brought out all the bells and whistles, from registration to information on dual enrollment to financial aid, all the resources that we offer at the College of Southern Nevada, and how parents and families and young people can engage in what we have to offer. And so we've taken that approach that we're not going to sit and wait for them to swim out to the boat. We're going to dock the boat and go out to the public. And so we've been real aggressive with trying to ensure that we share information in reference to our workforce development certificate programs, our non-credit programs that we offer as well, so that we can display that we have an array of things that are being offered. The Chancellor pointed out how CSN suffered, or our community colleges suffered during the pandemic. She's absolutely right, and we have been doing our part with working with many of our high school programs, scheduling field trips through JAG programs, and we've been making sure that we just leave no stone unturned. And so we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we get the word out using all platforms, via social media, via radio, attending events, hosting events, inviting people such as yourselves to come on our campus and talk to our students, and then using our ASCSN student body to go out and talk to their peers as well in the community. So those are just a few things that we've been doing at CSN that's been very effective.
Chair Torres Fawcett, members of the Assembly Ed Committee. For the record, Leonardo Benavides with UNLV. And we'll get more specific data to the committee afterwards, but we are in 17 schools in Southern Nevada, working directly with principals, building relationships both at CCSD and at charter schools. But we'll get more of a breakdown of what those schools are and where they are in the city. So a lot of work directly with the schools on that from our end.
Madam Chair, Michael Flores, the University of Nevada, Reno. A couple of years ago, we started what we're calling collegiate academies in Southern Nevada, and we're extremely proud of this partnership with the Clark County School District and also the Washoe County School District. We were invited by the Clark County School District to pilot a program at Centennial High School and Cheyenne High School in Southern Nevada, and from there we've expanded to 21 schools in total and primarily focused in Title I schools. There was a huge challenge with access for these courses, and it's expanded to Washoe County as well. I'm really proud of the work we've been doing there, and what we're seeing in preliminary data, and we'll follow up with that data, is that the majority of those students are not coming to our university but other institutions throughout the state. And so I know it's one of the priorities for NCHE is expanding access to higher education, and are proud of the program that we've built and continuing to do as much as we can. I'll be honest, I don't think we're in the rules as much as we'd like to be, and we know our partner institutions are, and we're trying to make sure we're working with everybody to make sure that everybody in the state is being serviced. And then one other point I just want to make, Madam Chair, is just to your question, Assemblymember LaRue Hatch. I think this has addressed a lot of issues with students not being prepared when they come to our institutions, and we're seeing more students who are college ready because they're getting that exposure in high school. And so we have not seen the data yet, but from what we're seeing at our institution, we have students who are going into those upper division courses sooner as they're entering our institution. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I remember attending a training at the great University of Nevada, and I remember one of the professors highlighted that like dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment programs really boost success of students in the university as well. And students that participate in those programs are significantly more likely to go to college and to graduate from college too. So they're more likely to be completers of college. So I just want to make sure that, you know, as we're having these conversations, that we're really focusing that around how we're going to make sure that there's an expansion of these in Title I schools and schools that look like my community, because I know that these are schools that are having a number of challenges with some of the rigorous standards and burdensome requirements of teachers, because a lot of teachers have only masters in education. They don't have masters outside of that field. And I do believe that it is imperative that the system figure out how they're going to support those educators so that they can provide access. Because if I can take that class from a teacher's aide at a university, I don't understand why a master's level teacher wouldn't be qualified to teach those classes.
Certainly, for the record, Patricia Charlton, Interim Chancellor. So thank you, Assemblymember Torres Fawcett. I'm having a brain fade right now. But I did want to just add to that point, that is the work that we are undertaking in the Align and Shine work. And so I think that is very important. We would also be very remiss if we also didn't highlight the great work that is happening at our community colleges as well in the CTE space, especially when they're articulating credit within those programs, very well established. And I think one of the success stories that we have truly is, in fact, one of the largest growth areas for the system, as those that may participate on the money committees will talk about, is also at Truckee Meadows Community College. They have amazing partnerships that they have embedded, and I know that we have representatives from that institution here today as well. And Great Basin, it's a whole different game that you're talking about when you're talking about Great Basin College. So we do have representatives from those two institutions if you would like to hear some of the work that they're doing specifically in the high schools, in the CTE, and in the rural communities, particularly in those workforce areas that we talked about.
Yeah, they look like they're really eager to come up. Go ahead.
Come on
when
down,
you're ready.
Mike Pearl and Sarah Negretti. Or, sorry, Jeff Alexander.
Sarah Negrete, Negrete for the record, and I'm the Vice President at Great Basin College, and I'm happy to highlight that Great Basin College is very, very involved in workforce development, both on the CTE side of our institution, and I want to bring in the health sciences too, as they are often not part of this idea when we're thinking CTE solely, but I want to make sure that they are getting credit as well. Great Basin College has a 100% pass rate for the nursing test, and we're really proud of that, and it's one of the reasons that our programs remain strong at Great Basin College. On the CTE, welding, diesel, electrical instrumentation side of our institution, we have wait lists for many of our programs. We have very strong partnerships with industry, And I think Assemblymember Hardy maybe mentioned that oftentimes they do have positions waiting for them upon graduation because of these partnerships. So Great Basin College is really doing great things with our CTE programs.
Jeffrey Alexander, Vice President of Academic Affairs at Truckee Meadows Community College, for the record. Thank you for the question, Chair Torres-Fawcett. We have at TMCC really taken great strides in recent years regarding dual credit, whether it's concurrent enrollment in the high schools or dual credit at the college. We also have quite a robust program of what we call our Jumpstart program, where students who are in the community can simply come to the college and enroll in classes of their own volition, even if they aren't part necessarily of a dual credit arrangement with the high school. We also have the TMCC High School at the college campus, at the Dandini campus, and that continues to be a very robustly enrolled program where the students who graduate go on to college careers, very often transferring directly, and many of them, of course, completing an associate degree at the same time that they complete their high school diploma. On the question of credentialing, and I think that's really important, TMCC maintains a standard of having 15 graduate credits in the discipline of instruction. So if a person had a master's degree in education, for example, and they possess 15 credits in, say, English or an associated subject, they would be eligible to teach that class. Very often a teacher's aide at a university may be complementing and assisting an instructor as a teaching assistant, but very often the person with the credential to teach the class is the instructor of record. So here at TMCC, we ensure that we maintain that standard. We believe firmly that students deserve instructional equity, and that equity comes in the form of having an instructor in the classroom who is as qualified as the one you would meet at the college campus.
Thank you. I don't believe there's any other questions for the presentation at this time, members. No, so we will go ahead and continue on to our next presentation. And so, Chancellor, feel free to stay right there. And then I'll invite anybody up who is going to be speaking regarding the public safety at the Nevada System of Higher Education.
Good afternoon, and for the record again, Patricia Charlton, Interim Chancellor, Nevada System of Higher Education. Today it is our pleasure to be before you to provide an update on public safety within the Nevada System of Higher Education. Following the tragic events of December 6, 2023, that happened at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where we saw 3 of our very own lose their life to an active shooter. At that time, I created what's called the Ad Hoc Chancellor's Public Safety Committee, which is comprised today of faculty, students, different representatives from each institutions, and most importantly, our public safety department as well. And so with that, we'd like to present information on the work of the Chancellor's Public Safety Committee and the work that our 2 police chiefs here today are going to share with you as far as what we have done, what we have coming up into the future, and then also, while not a money committee, I understand this is a policy committee, also some of the needs that we have from an infrastructure perspective and public safety personnel. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to each of the chiefs to introduce themselves, and then they're actually going to let me drive this PowerPoint, so be afraid.
Thank you, Chancellor. For the record, Arnold Vasquez, V-A-S-Q-U-E-Z, Interim Chief of Police for the University Police Department Southern Command. Thank you, Chair and Assembly members, for this time. Just wanted to kind of touch a little bit more on what the Chancellor has indicated about the Public Safety Committee that was created in the wake of the events of December 6, 2023 on the campus of UNLV. I'd like to talk a little bit about the charge of that committee and the structure of that particular piece. The committee's charge was to evaluate and prioritize opportunities for improvement in system-wide campus safety and emergency preparedness, with the expectation to include significant new improvements, investments in facility, technology, and training initiatives. The committee has received support and engaged with a wide group of stakeholders throughout the NSHE community in forming recommendations provided to the Chancellor. As depicted in the slide, As depicted on the slide, the committee was structured to include the following subcommittees: emergency communications, threat intelligence and management, financial models and budget requests, physical security, emergency management, training, law enforcement public safety operations, and interagency partnerships. In the next few slides, Chief James and I will talk about some of the main recommendations which have been accepted and are either in implementation, in progress, or pending further review. In addition to these recommendations and individual institution efforts, I'd like to highlight a few of the notable committee initiatives. Immediately following the December 6, 2023 event, the Interim Finance Committee granted a request to support supplemental on-site security staffing at the NSHE institutions in Southern Nevada. With this, we were able to provide a highly visible presence throughout the campuses in the Southern Nevada region, and that went through the calendar year of 2024. That project was completed at the end of last year. However, the Southern Nevada institutions have continued the project for the remainder of this school year. In addition, the congressional delegation request to improve our existing 911 public safety answering point. This would improve call handling, aligning the technology with our regional public safety partners, and that request has been submitted for consideration in the upcoming federal budget. Okay. As mentioned by the Chancellor, the following recommendations of the Chancellor's Public Safety, one of the recommendations was for the Chancellor's Public Safety Council has been accepted and is in implementation. Much like the Public Safety Committee, it essentially mirrors the Chancellor, that particular committee's charge with the intent to carry the work already underway forward. The Public Safety Council will review, evaluate, and as needed, make recommendations to the Chancellor to address safety and security matters across the system. The Public Safety Council will work to enhance the safety and security of all NSHE institutions by making these recommendations to ensure consistent safety standards, equitable resource distribution, and effective implementation of safety protocols. The Public Safety Council will report to the Chancellor, and appointments will be in conformity with Title II, Chapter 1 of the Code to include representatives from each NSHE institution. In addition, the Public Safety Council may be charged without limitation with some additional tasks. One of them is to evaluate safety and security issues impacting the institutions and provide those comprehensive reports and recommendations to the Chancellor. In addition, actively seek, leverage, or recommend financial funding sources to improve and implement safety improvements across the institutions as well. Encourage all safety enhancements, including infrastructure improvements, training, and protocols, be distributed equitably across the institutions so that campuses of all sizes and locations have access to the necessary resources. In addition, adding on to training, encourage the consistency of that training, ensuring that each campus follows a uniform safety standard. And finally, to support the Board of Regents Security Committee with regular reports supported by current research on related data in relation to the charges outlined by the committee's mission. Slide 4. I'm sorry. The following recommendations of mandatory safety language have been accepted and are in various stages of implementation. One of them is the active assailant events. The committee recommended that all institutions adopt a system-wide safety language addressing active assailant events, general emergency preparedness, and other pertinent safety information. In addition, general emergency preparedness, we are looking to expand on existing general safety presentations and explore other media platforms. In addition, collaborate with system-wide institutions to ensure the continuity and provide regular updates. And finally, offering other pertinent safety information. This is in an attempt to standardize that safety language across the institutions. And as a part of this effort, we have in a draft state standardized syllabi language, which has been circulated through the institutions and faculty groups over the last semester. That project is currently in progress with, as I mentioned, that drafted syllabi, and is being finalized and awaiting implementation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief James.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Eric James, University Police Department Northern Command Chief of Police. As you can see in the slide presentation, one of the things that came out of the Safety Committee was the availability for all information to be put in one place, because it was in 8 different places. And so working with the NCHI IT department, we've sort of gone with a model of go to the NCHI main website, click on your institution, that institution will link directly to all the safety information for each institution. So it's just an easier way to get the information that people are looking for. Secondly, in the event of an emergency where we've used our emergency alert system at any one of our campuses, it'll scroll across the top of that, so everyone, whether it's north or south, would know there's an issue and here's what that issue is. It doesn't matter what the issue is, it's just whatever it might be that we've sent out an emergency alert for. So the recommendations that are now in process, crisis management team and senior leadership advanced trainings to include tabletop exercises and emergency communications. So the senior leadership at each institution is now doing crisis management and tabletop exercises, so scenario-based training. And then safety posters for each institution that'll be permanently posted in each of the classrooms, and it'll have QR codes that'll go, again, directly to those institutions to all their safety website page. And then system threat assessment policy to best coordinate information, sharing, gathering as it relates to emergency and immediate threats, including the adoption of a system, office threat case management system. So we received a federal grant from the TVPTP, which is about $500,000. And right now we're in the process of going through and finding a case management system that everyone within NCHI, the entire state, can use to manage their threats and or have any type of a threat that might be there. The institutions will be able to talk to say, we've had that individual here too. They can collaborate and share information. Other things that we're currently researching are lock-in mechanisms for not only exterior but also interior doors to be configured or replaced. We also are sensitive to know that each institution is not the same. So each institution may come up with something different, but it will meet certain qualifications that it has to meet to include fire code or OSHA safety codes. Active assailant videos are currently being used by all institutions, and we're trying to kind of format that into an institution-specific video addressing specific campus layouts and information. System-wide emergency notification system. Now we currently have one. We're working, the North and South are now working together to partner to try to get those to integrate together, and I think we're getting pretty close with that. I'm not an IT specialist, so it's not my lane, but I know we're getting closer to that weekly. And then emergency response plans to include preparedness and operational programs. So our emergency managers in the North and South working together, putting all of our response plans in the same place. So it's not a we don't know where to go to find the information. It's already here it is behind a secure firewall. There's the information that we need to get out right now. And with that, questions?
Members, any questions? Assemblymember De Silva.
Thank you, Chair. I got a quick question about there's a lot of concern about immigration raids, on our campuses. My question really pertains to what are we doing to protect those students? Say there is a request from ICE for a warrant. Is there a policy in place that NCHI or the public safety component will have to utilize? I just wanted to clarify some of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Member. Yes, we've already communicated this with all the administration, both North and South, to include what's going to happen. If there is an administrative detainer, meaning it's just for immigration, that's just not something we enforce. We don't enforce federal law. We enforce state and local law. If there is a judicial warrant for an arrest for someone for some sort of criminal activity, it wouldn't matter if it was immigration, the FBI, Reno Police, or Metro, we would assist them in that action to do that. But as far as just immigration status goes, no, we would not be participating in that.
Yeah, thank you. So would you mind sending just a statement to the committee, just so we have something on record? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you so much, Chair, and really want to thank you for all of your hard work and all that you're doing for our students and our staff. And really just my question is, if we think a state purview and NCHI is statewide, just what are you seeing? We know Southern Nevada is different than Elko. What are things that we're seeing we're going to have to make sure we both make sure there's a uniform standard, but it's also differentiated based on the areas, and how does that add to some issues you may be coming across? Thank
So
you.
certainly for the record, Patricia Charlton, Interim Chancellor. So thank you, Assemblymember Mosca, for that question. So first, one of the things I think that we benefit a great deal with is to having our two chiefs that really communicate very effectively. They meet all the time together. We meet as the three of us together. We also recognize that each of our areas and each of our institutions are very different. And so the fact that we have one chief that is supporting our northern institutions and another chief that supports our southern institutions, however, they actually partner because, as many know, UNR actually has facilities in Southern Nevada. And so one of the things that we do is, and I think through this standing Public Safety Council, is really to ensure that we have standards. The other thing that we want to ensure happens, and they've touched on this a little bit, is many of our students, especially in the South, and I think it happens up in the North too, they go in between institutions, and that we want to ensure that no matter where you are or what may happen, that you know exactly where to go for the resources. You know exactly what the training protocols might be or what the safety protocols are. It is a sad day, the fact that we don't say if, it's when, and we have realized that. Things happen. Our police chiefs also are very, very embedded on a statewide level. I know that they are a part of the statewide Chiefs Council, but they also are embedded within their community. So in Southern Nevada, for example, Chief Vasquez is in constant communication with Highway Patrol, Metro, Henderson PD, North Las Vegas. He's even got a site out in Mesquite, and he's also providing support to Chief James at the Pahrump location that Great Basin is responsible for. So I think it's that communication throughout the state, throughout the region, and then also with each other and with, I think, our Board of Regents through the Security Committee, and then also with all of the institutional leadership. I think that is a benefit. And they also take across best practices that are happening across the country. Some of the things that we learn are because of things that unfortunately happen somewhere else.
Thank you, and I just want to commend you for your work, and thank you again.
Thank you. I did have one last question in regard to the Power-Based Violence Task Force. If you can kind of provide some type of update on like the status of that. I know that they were also supposed to be pulling like a data or some type of study as well during the interim. So I wanted to know if you could provide some information about that or get that to the committee.
Certainly, for the record, Interim Chancellor Charlton, and we would be happy to provide that report. We do have an active and engaged power-based violence task force that is across NC that is represented as called out in the legislation. We have a fantastic chair of that group, that committee, Dean Elizabeth Gunn from Nevada State University. We have done a survey. We provided also a report to the LCB, I think it was late last year, but we would be happy to provide an update specifically on the work of the Power-Based Violence Task Force. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Members, any additional questions? Assemblymember De Silva.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Vice Chair
Yes.
De Silva.
Just a quick question, more of a clarifying question. So I know there's been some rather large residential sort of complexes going up, especially around UNLV and UNR here and in the downtown area. So the question really is like, who has like jurisdiction over that? I know technically it's outside of the purview of the university, but these are students who are primarily living there. So like, how does that arrangement work with local law enforcement? Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Arnold Vasquez. Thank you, Vice Chair De Silva, for that question. Yes, I mean, we do have various residential life on different campuses. Some of them are located directly on the campus themselves, in which case that would be our jurisdictional boundaries and we would handle those. Others are just outside of that, let's just call it a bubble. And we do work very, very closely with our local law enforcement partners to address those. And in many cases, when they are responding or they get a certain call for service, which typically might be tied to one of our affiliates from the university, we will respond with them to assist in any way we can. So we have a very close lockstep type of approach when it comes to policing those areas.
Eric James, for the record, what he said, we do the same sort of thing. We have memorandums of understanding, and they are right across the street. And so anytime the Reno Police Department goes out to any of those complexes, we all share the same radio system, so we hear what's going on. We go out there with them as well.
Thank you. I don't believe there's any questions, but I did want to thank Assemblymember Flanagan.
Really quickly, thank you, Madam Chair. In line with my colleague's question, when you have off-campus events, which still are student based events like a football game, and now that you guys are at Allegiant Stadium, I'm assuming you coordinate with Metro, but can you just paint a picture of what that looks like as we prepare?
Absolutely. For the record, Arnold Vasquez. Thank you, Assemblymember Flanagan, for the question. Yes, we do, as Chief James alluded to, we do have memorandums of understanding with our local law enforcement partners, specifically at Allegiant Stadium, just by the sheer size of that event, or venue rather. We do have to partner not only with Las Vegas Metro, but also the other agencies within our valley. So at any one of those games, you would likely see Henderson Police Department, our police department, CCSD PD, and so forth in Metro. So that's how we manage those particular events. Some of the other smaller events and smaller venues, we actually take the lead on those, and then we call in for support through our MOU if we need additional bodies to help manage those particular events.
Thank you. And I do believe there's a Rebels Wolfpack basketball game this Friday, and I'm sure the Wolfpack will win. So I look forward to seeing the results this weekend. Thank you so much for coming to present to our committee, and we really would just want to thank you for all that you do to keep our campuses safe. Obviously, committee members are aware of the incident that occurred a little bit more than a year ago at the UNLV campus, and I know it's something that continues to impact the university community, and so we appreciate you for taking the time to give us this update today, and we appreciate all that you do to keep our campuses safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, while we're kind of transitioning the room, we are going to be introducing two different BDRs today. So we have BDR 528 and BDR 532. As a reminder, I'm going to go to our legal counsel to kind of just explain what the BDR introduction process is. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So generally, there are any bills that are coming from the committee or coming from one of the interim committees require introduction by a committee of record in the legislature itself. The two BDRs that are in front of the committee today are actually two BDRs that came from the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Education that got referred to the Assembly side. So the vote that the committee will be taking will be just to introduce the versions of these BDRs that the legal division has drafted for the interim committee. I believe the standard disclaimer is that a vote in support of introduction is not a vote in support of the measure. It is just allowing it to be introduced on the floor so that this body can then receive it back to discuss it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll take a motion to introduce BDR 528.
So moved.
Do I have a second? I have a second. I have the motion from Assembly Member De Silva, and I have a second from Assembly Member Hunt. Is there any comment on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. This motion does pass unanimously. Please note for the record. Assemblymember Flanagan, Assemblymember Koenig are currently not present, just for the secretary. Next, we'll go on to BDR 532. Do I have a motion to introduce at this time? I have the motion from Vice Chair De Silva. Do I have a second? I have a second from Assemblymember Dahlia. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. This motion does pass unanimously from the members present. Thank you. And at this time, we'll go ahead and open the hearing on AB 217, which revises provisions relating to law enforcement on school property. So I'll invite Assemblymember Gonzalez and her co-presenters. And if you could just a reminder to committee members, we do have an amendment that has been posted on Nellis as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Torres Fawcett and committee members. For the record, my name is Assembly Member Cecilia Gonzalez, and I represent Assembly District 16. And I'm here today to present AB 217. As the chair mentioned, there is a proposed amendment available on Nellis, which will delete all of Section 2. So just to clarify, we are only proposing Section 1 of the bill. Across the country, students, families, and educators are stressed and fearful for federal immigration officials coming into their schools. This fear and stress causes reluctancy to attend school, preventing students from accessing and receiving a free public education and any critical social service that they or their families may receive. One cannot put into words the trauma and anxiety that this is producing and the impact that it's having on our students, on their mental health, on their academic performance, their overall well-being, and the fact of them attending school. In summary, AB 217 prohibits school districts and public school personnel from allowing immigration and customs enforcement officers or any other federal official investigating or enforcing immigration to access the district's facilities or school grounds and disclosing a student's educational records, family or household information, or any other information about the student without a lawful order or warrant issued by a court with the appropriate jurisdiction and signature. This bill also defines public schools to include charter schools. And finally, any individual that knowingly and willfully violates this provision is guilty of a misdemeanor. I will now turn my presentation over to Noe, who is from Make the Road, who assisted me with the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Torres, Fawcett, and committee members. For the record, my name is Noe Orozco. That's N-O-E, accent over the E, O-R-O-S-C-O. I'm the Government Affairs Manager with Make the Road, Nevada. We want to thank Assemblymember Gonzalez for all her work on this. She has been a needed voice for Nevadan families, and we are honored to be here today alongside her. What we have been hearing from families and our youth members is an overwhelming sense of fear and uncertainty, particularly those who come from mixed status families. Many students, especially those in mixed status households, have shared concerns about their family's safety. The anxiety follows them into the classroom, where it severely impacts their ability to concentrate and engage in learning. Over the past few years, the state's chronic absenteeism was approximately 35%. We saw the public schools statewide made progress towards lowering this by as much as 9 percentage points in the last academic year. As the school year closed, 13 counties had higher absenteeism rates than the state average of 25%. Of those 13 counties, Make the Road, Nevada has presence in 4: Churchill, Clark, Nye, and Washoe. Recently, we have seen a common thread emerging in the conversations with students and parents. An increasing fear and uncertainty. Many students are afraid to attend school because they worry about their family safety. The thought of immigration enforcement officers potentially being present on campuses creates an environment of distress. Instead of being able to focus on their studies, these students become preoccupied with survival, much taking a significant toll on their emotional well-being and academic performance. As Assemblymember Gonzalez mentioned, this is not isolated to Nevada. It's happening nationwide. While we may not have control over the events that are unfolding on a national scale, we do have the power to make a meaningful impact within our own communities. It's important to highlight that this bill does not create any new legal requirements. Rather, it serves to reinforce existing policies by codifying them into law and providing a safeguard against potential threats in the future. AB 217 is a continuation of the state's commitment to reducing the absenteeism while simultaneously fostering an inclusive and secure environment for students, parents, and educators. By reinforcing protections and affirming existing policies, we can build on the progress made in recent years and work towards a future where every student, regardless of their family's immigration status, can attend schools without fear and with the confidence that their educational institution is a place of safety and learning. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the Assembly member.
Thank you. With that, we are open for questions.
Members, any questions? Assembly Member DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the presentation. With putting these requirements into statute, how is this bill ensuring that any employee of a school district or a school that implements these legal requirements now isn't going to be violating 18 USC, United States Code?
Our legal can take a look into that. But I do know that it is currently the policy of LCB legal that they do not draft legislation that they believe is in violation with U.S. law. So I think I can pass it over to our legal counsel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So generally, under the 11th Amendment to the United States Constitution, the federal government cannot force states to enforce federal law. And the language of this bill does not impact the ability of federal officers to enforce federal laws. That would be a violation of the U.S. Constitution's Supremacy Clause. Instead, it's a direction to state officers and to local officers, which are the kinds of officials that the state of Nevada can regulate, to not comply with certain attempts at enforcement of federal law. And since under the 11th Amendment to the United States Constitution, the federal government cannot require states to enforce federal law, the state does have the authority under the federal Constitution to enact that kind of provision.
Assemblymember Lou Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this important bill. My question is, obviously, as a teacher, I'm reading the section 2 where it says we shall not disclose or provide education records, and that reminds me very much of FERPA. I'm not allowed already to disclose records, and so I just wondered, is this aligned with that? Am I already not supposed to disclose under FERPA? Is this a change to that?
Thank you so much for the question, Assemblymember Cecilia Gonzalez, for the record. That is correct. Currently, you are not supposed to be sharing that information. However, in state law, and legal can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that it is my understanding that there's not anything that would hold you accountable if you did violate that currently in Nevada statute. And so this also gives that provision teeth to say if you do violate this, it could be in regards to what we're talking about here, the topic of today, which is immigration. But if you violate this, then you will be held accountable. And that is the intent. Asher, I'm not sure if you wanted to comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. Yes, so those provisions of federal law would generally apply, but federal law is not generally enforceable under state law. Since this would be a state law provision that provides a similar restriction, this would create a basis under state law to enforce that restriction as well.
Thank you. And Chair, may I have just a quick follow-up? Do we know, and it may be a legal question, what is the penalty for violating FERPA now?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. There are a variety of possible penalties. It really depends on the kind of violation, the conduct at issue, the severity of the violation. The most common penalties for violations of FERPA would be potential civil liability for any harms caused by the disclosure of the inappropriate material, in addition to a potential loss of federal funding, either some or all federal funding, which is a substantial amount of funding that goes into public schools in Nevada.
Members, any additional questions? Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this really important bill. And I just apologize if I missed it. Did you talk about if there are other districts or other states that are starting to do this and how we kind of fit with that? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Assemblymember Cecilia Gonzalez, District 16 for the record. Currently, this is the policy in 2 of our biggest counties, and so we are seeking to codify that policy. I also want to say that across the nation, we have seen instances where officers have gone to schools and have intimidated teachers, staff, and students, and so those national, what's the word I'm looking for? In the national level, they have started having this conversation as well. And the last thing I'll add is that this is in response to the community. You know, we run bills all the time that are from our constituents, and this is really a call and response to the fears of our students, staff, and families, and mixed status families. Thank you.
Members, any additional questions? It doesn't appear that there are any. So at this time, we will go ahead and go into support. We will provide 30 minutes. So the time is exactly 3 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and start. We'll start here in Carson City, and then I'll go up to Las Vegas, and we'll continuously rotate. I do note that there have been a couple letters submitted as well. So members, you can view those as well. We'll go ahead and start when you're ready. State your name and spell your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Torres Fawcett and members of the Assembly Education Committee. My name is Carissa Pierce, CARISSA-PEARCE, and I represent the Children's Advocacy Alliance as our Government Affairs Manager. CAA is an independent voice for Nevada's children, advancing systematic change in the areas of early childhood education, children's health, and child welfare to ensure that every child in Nevada thrives. And I'm here to speak about the critical need for psychological safety in schools to ensure that children can learn. Right now, many students, especially those in families with mixed immigration status, are in distress. This fear is directly impacting their mental health, their school attendance, and ultimately their ability to learn. We know that chronic absenteeism is a growing crisis, and according to the Annie E. Casey Foundation 2024 Kids Count Data Book, over 40% of Nevada's students missed more than 10% of the academic year, which amounts to 47,000 students. Students cannot learn if they are not in school. And if immigration authorities are allowed to enter schools, these numbers will only rise as fear keeps students at home. Schools should be a safe place for every child, regardless of their family's immigration status. When students feel unsafe, their mental health suffers and learning becomes impossible. Allowing federal agents into schools compromises that sense of security and places students under unnecessary stress. No child should ever have to choose between getting an education and protecting their family. I urge you to prioritize student mental health and psychological safety by ensuring schools remain a place where all students feel safe, supported, and ready to learn. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kayla Maese, spelled Kaylah. Last name is Maese. I'm a civil rights analyst at the ACLU of Nevada. The ACLU supports this bill and thanks the sponsor for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association, MARKS. NSCA is wholeheartedly in support of Section 1 or 217 as amended to maintain the current practice of not assisting immigration enforcement at schools without lawful order or court warrant. Educators, students, and families are understandably concerned about their safety and well-being of their families and communities. With the new executive order reversing a ban on immigration enforcement at sensitive locations, including schools, immigrant families are faced with increasing levels of fear and upheaval. Just the potential of immigration enforcement at school harms environments, including by causing increased absences, decreased student achievement, and parental disengagement. It is the right of every child, regardless of immigration status, to access free public K-12 education. This right was affirmed in model policies just issued by Nevada's Attorney General. Quote, teachers, school administrators, and staff are already overburdened in our public schools, working diligently to make sure our children can stay focused on their primary objective of learning. Allowing federal immigration agents to operate in our public schools will create unnecessary distraction for our children. This guidance keeps schools free of invasive civil immigration enforcement so our educators are free to educate and every student can enjoy a safe, secure learning environment. While Nevada continues to address the crisis of educator vacancies, it's important to keep in mind that many Nevada educators, from classroom teachers to people who make our schools run, are DACA recipients. Immigration enforcement in school adds a layer of stress at work for these public servants and will only contribute to greater numbers of educator vacancies. NSCA urges the legislature to pass AB 217 to protect all Nevada students, educators, families, and communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tara Webster, Tarawebster. I'm the Policy Manager for the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, here in support of AB 217. For those of you who have heard me speak, I really love telling stories, so here I go. In the mid-1960s, after over a decade of political violence in Colombia, my family migrated to the United States. My uncles were ages 5 and 7 at the time, and my mother had not yet been born. During their primary school years, my uncles were fully immersed in American culture, learning English during the day and sharing what they learned with my grandmother at home. They eventually became naturalized citizens in the 80s before enrolling in the U.S. military. Much like our current political climate in the 1960s and 70s, they were marked by racism across the United States. However, according to my uncle's recollection, ICE didn't exist and school was a safe space where they could attend without fear of government raids or deportation. Today, parents are afraid to send their children to school, and children face daily fears that their families will be taken away. Just last week, an 11-year-old girl in Texas died by suicide after being bullied and threatened about her family's immigration status. This is why we, as well as you, as lawmakers, are obligated to ensure that every child, regardless of their background or immigration status, has the right to a high-quality education and a safe space to learn. They deserve to feel safe, secure, and welcomed in all educational environments. While Clark County and Washoe County school districts have reaffirmed their commitment to protecting students not participating in the enforcement of federal immigration law, AB 217 will prohibit access to any educational records or information about students, their families, or households. I'm testifying today because immigration enforcement does not belong in our schools. Allowing these agencies to target schools is intended to create fear and erode trust in public institutions. On behalf of the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, we urge your support for AB 217. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just remind those in support that I believe that we do have a number of testimony in support. So if you feel like just saying ditto and your organization, that's totally welcomed as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Torres Fawcett and the Education Committee. SEIU 11, I'm Aisha Goins, AESHA-GOINS, here on behalf of SEIU 1107. We're grateful to Assembly Member Gonzalez for bringing this bill, and the members, SEIU 1107 members, just want to know that their family scholars are safe in school and are free to engage and receive public education. Thank you. We're in support.
Hello, thank you, Chair Torres Fawcett and committee members. My name is Caitlin Gatchalian, CAITLIN, and I'm the chair of the API Democratic Caucus for the state of Nevada. As a caucus, we are here to support AB 217. The API Democratic Caucus seeks to maximize the participation of Asian American and Pacific Islanders as a powerful force in the political process. Recognizing the rich heritage represented by the terms Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, we seek to strengthen and solidify our political participation and leverage that power to create lasting change for our members of our community. AB 217 is a necessary step in ensuring that our schools remain places of learning, safety, and community, free from fear and intimidation by immigration enforcement agencies. The Asian American and Pacific Islander community understands the deep impact of immigration enforcement policies. Many of our families, friends, and neighbors have experienced the uncertainty and fear associated with the broken immigration system. Education should never be compromised by fear. When students are afraid to attend school or participate fully in their education, our entire community suffers. AB 217 ensures that ICE cannot enter school grounds without a judicial warrant, reinforcing that schools are places of learning, not enforcement zones. This policy is not about obstructing law enforcement. It is about upholding the basic rights of students to learn in a safe and stable environment. Students need to feel protected in a world that is too unpredictable as it is. With the support and passing of AB 217, students from all over our education system will have a better mindset towards bettering their future and lessening their plate of uncertainty. Our caucus stands firmly in support of AB 217 because we believe in protecting the dignity and security of all students. We urge the committee to pass this bill and reaffirm Nevada's commitment to education, equity, and justice. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman, JONATHAN, NORMAN, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers, ditto. Thank you.
Matthew Wilkie, MATTHEWWILKIE. For the record, not representing an organization or group, just here in my own capacity, and ditto as well. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Willett, and I'm the Senior Campaign Manager at All Voting is Local Nevada, an organization that advocates for policies and legislative priorities that expand voter access, and we support AB 217. We echo all of the previous comments that were made, and I can add that my mother's a teacher, and she's constantly talking about her fear for her students over these issues. Beyond the impact on the students, this issue has implications for voting access. A significant law enforcement presence at polling places can intimidate voters, and since many schools function as polling places, maintaining a welcoming and intimidation-free environment is critical to ensuring that all eligible voters can participate without fear. For these reasons, and to protect our children and Nevada's voters, we urge you to support AB 217.
Thank you, Chair Fawcett, Torres Fawcett, and members of the committee. My name is Eric Chang, ERICJENG, Executive Director of One API Nevada. And I wrote a lot, but I just wanted to say one paragraph. We've heard so much from community leaders and advocates because they're hearing from families being fearful, and kids asking about their parents if they will be safe. When I want to say mixed status families, I want to say that because even those that are longtime U.S. citizens are now afraid just because of their race and their skin color. And this is a thing that we are hearing. So we're in here full support of this bill. Thank you.
Hello, Marco Rauda, M-A-R-C-O-R-A-U-D-A. I was 6 years old when I came to this country, and I spent my first week in a detention center. And I remember after I got out of the detention center and going into school for the first couple of days and just being terrified of immigration agents coming to get me and take me away from my family. So in reality, I'm just here in my own capacity and to support this. I hope that we can find a way to protect students no matter what their immigration status is. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Carson City. Let's go ahead and go to Las Vegas. We actually finished, I think, the support here in Carson. So go ahead in Las Vegas.
Good afternoon to the committee chair and members of the Education Committee. My name is Lucetta Keys, and I live in Las Vegas Assembly District 5, Senate District 8. I'd like to thank Assembly Member Cecilia Gonzalez for bringing this BDR forward. I am the granddaughter of a German immigrant, deeply pained by the past my grandmother endured. Her friends disappeared from school, families turned on each other, and her nation devolved into an enduring example of man's inhumanity, man. Now I'm a grandmother, so incredibly concerned about my granddaughter's generation, already scarred by a worldwide pandemic. Our children should not be terrorized by the threat of immigration enforcement entering their classrooms. Our teachers already are on the front lines of a major mental health crisis. Are we trying to make this worse? I urge you to vote yes on AB 217. Vote it out of this committee and pass it with a veto-proof bipartisan majority. Thank you for this opportunity.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Erika Castro, E-R-I-K-A-C-A-S-T-R-O. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada Immigrant Coalition in full support of AB 217. We want to thank Assemblymember Gonzalez for bringing this bill forward at a critical time. On January 20th, this administration currently rescinded the Department of Homeland Security policy that protected certain areas, such as churches, schools, and hospitals from immigration enforcement. This has been replaced by an unreleased directive that gives ICE agents uncontrolled power to take enforcement actions in any of these spaces using so-called common sense. But anti-immigrant policies create unsafe communities for all of us and erode trust in our public institutions. In Nevada, according to the Migration Policy Institute, immigrants comprise 30% of all parents of children ages 0 to 4 and 34% of all parents of children ages 5 to 10 years old. According to the American Immigration Council, 19.2% of our state's residents are foreign-born and 12.4% are U.S.-born residents who live with at least one immigrant parent. Immigrants are an integral part of our communities. Some children or schools may or may not know the dangers of having ICE enforcement at their schools due to the recent rescission of this memo. It is our responsibility as Nevadans to protect all kids in our schools, regardless of their immigration status, so we can have successful and thriving students. AB 217 will ensure that schools across our state remain a safe learning environment for all. It doesn't interfere with federal law and simply upholds the values that our schools are a learning environment, not for deportations. As our state thrives with the labor, economic input, and cultural diversity of our immigrant communities, we urge you to support AB 217 to allow all students, regardless of their immigration status, to continue to learn and grow in our schools without the fear of family separation. Please preserve Nevada schools as a safe space for the community. Thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sandra Flores, and I am a former student of the Clark County School District. I am here today to support AB 217, the Student Safety Act, because every student deserves to feel safe in their learning environment, free from fear and uncertainty. As someone who attended CCSD schools, I saw how immigration concern weighed heavily on many students. Schools should be a place of learning, not places where students worry about possibility of immigration enforcement disrupting their lives. No student should have to sit in class afraid that their family member won't be home when they get back. No parent should have to question whether sending their child to school and put them to risk. The Trump administration removal of protection for sensitive location was a direct attack on immigrant families, spreading fear and instability in our communities. But in Nevada, we have the chance to take a stand and ensure that schools remain spaces of learning, not targets for enforcement. AB 217 helps provide that security by creating a clear guideline that protects students from unnecessary trauma and disruption. The bill is not just about protecting immigrant rights. It benefits all students. When children feel safe, they can focus on their education. Teachers can teach without navigating immigrant-related anxieties in the classroom. Parents can send their kids to school without fear. A secure school environment fosters academic success and a stronger future for our state. I urge this committee to pass AB 217 and make it clear that Nevada schools are places where students can learn, grow, and feel protected. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Sylvia Lazos, Lazos. I am a law professor emerita and also a longtime advocate of CCSD equity issues. On the first point, we are not going to be changing policy in Nevada with regard to our two largest districts. As has been pointed out, what this law tries to do is prevent raids and not try to impede federal law enforcement in any way when they have a properly executed warrant. Two, in constitutional law, we have had principles for a long time under the case known as Plyler v. Doe that our children do not pay for the sins of our parents. If you're a child of an unauthorized immigrant, our Constitution says you can come to a public school here in the United States. We do not believe under our 14th Amendment that you should be denied a public education because this would create a separate caste. A caste is not allowable under the principles of our Constitution. And third, I think in our immigrant communities, and in particular in Clark County, which has so many immigrants, not having this law would have a huge impact. We know that most of our students are immigrants. Over 50% of CCSD are immigrant families. We also know that these immigrant families, about 35% lived in mixed status families. And we know from COVID that when families do not feel safe, they just keep their children home. We need in Nevada every child to go to school every day. That's our future workforce. And this law will send the message that we will protect children and families when they attend public school. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, chairs and member of the committee. My name is Isabella Campos, and I am a former student in the Clark County School District and a member of Make the Road Nevada. I'm here today to express my support for AB 217, the Student Safety Act, because I believe school should be a place where students can focus on learning, feel supported, and know that safety is a priority. AB 217 helps make that possibility by creating clear guidelines to ensure that every student is treated fairly and feels secure in their school environment. I've seen firsthand how safety concerns affect students in CCSD. I believe our schools must remain places of learning, not fear. No child should have to worry about whether ICE will show up at the school, and no parent should have to think twice about sending their kids to get an education. The Trump administration decision to rescind protection for sensitive locations is a direct attack on immigrant families, meant to spread fear and disrupt lives. In Nevada, Immigrants are an integral part of our communities, and we must take a stand. AB 217 provides safety and peace for us, children, to concentrate on learning and not being traumatized by immigration reinforcement by taking our friends by force. I urge the Nevada Legislature to protect our students and make it clear that our schools are safe spaces, not places for politically motivated enforcement actions. This bill is important because it benefits everyone. Students can concentrate on their education without unnecessary stress. Teachers can focus on teaching instead of handling safety concerns alone, and parents can feel reassured knowing their children are in a structured and supportive environment. When students feel safe, they are more engaged, more confident, and more likely to succeed. I urge this committee to support AB 217 because it will make a real difference for students in Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Noah Cicero. I am a paralegal and poet in the Las Vegas community. I am here with Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada and as a member of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Church. The Pew Research Center, as of 2022, estimated that 8.8% of Nevada households have an undocumented immigrant, and 13.9% of Nevadan children have an undocumented parent. I do not believe that ICE should be allowed to enter schools. Since I have moved to Las Vegas from Ohio in 2014, I have made friends with undocumented people and people with temporary protective status, TPS, from Mexico, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, Peru, and China. They have shared their lives with me, and I have shared my life with them. I cannot imagine the last 11 years of my life without them. I want to continue sharing my life with them. The fact that my friends and their family could be deported, to have their lives uprooted and destroyed for no good reason, horrifies me. The fact the federal government would do anything to break up families horrifies me. I have come to know children of undocumented parents. I know their smiles. I know their faces. I know their laughs. I believe we should have safe zones in place, that ICE should be prohibited from entering schools. I urge the committee to vote yes on AB 217.
Good afternoon.
And I just
I'm
want
Yvonne
to,
Menezes, a proud member
hi,
of
please
Make the
pause
Road
for just a
Nevada,
moment.
a
I'm
parent
gonna,
of
excuse
CCSD
me,
students.
excuse me, I'm speaking
I'm
here
here
and
to
I
show
need
my
to pause.
support
Can we have the
for
mic turned off?
AB
I'm trying to
17.
talk.
The Student Safety
Excuse
Act.
me, ma'am,
As
can
a
somebody,
parent,
do they hear me in Las Vegas? Thank you. If you could just pause for just a second, I just want to make it clear that I'm going to continue with testimony in Las Vegas first, and then I will go to the lines for the phone. So just if you're waiting on the phones, I'm going to finish those that made the drive to join us in person. I'm going to finish those people first, and then I will go to the phone. So go ahead and continue to proceed. Please restate and spell your name. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Menezes, a proud member of Make the Road Nevada and a parent of a CCSD student. I'm here to show my support for AB 217, the Student Safety Act. As a parent, my child's safety is my highest priority. A school should be a place of learning, growth, and opportunity, free from fear and intimidation. Yet, the Trump administration decision to resign protections from sensitive locations has put immigrants' families in constant distress, turning schools into places of uncertainty instead of safety. No child should have to sit in the classroom wondering if today is that day their life will change forever. Because of immigration rate, no parent should have to choose between sending their child to school and protecting their family from being torn apart. Schools are heart of our communities. They are not just places where students learn, but also where families access essential resources, attend events, build relationships. The presence of immigration enforcement in or around schools does not just harm undocumented working families, it hurts all the students. When fear enters the classrooms, learning suffers. When parents are afraid to engage with school children, lose critical support. I urge this committee to pass AB 217 and send a clear message. In Nevada, we protect our children. We do not allow ICE to turn schools into battlegrounds of fear. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Garcia, lead organizer with Make the Road Nevada. I just want to say that I fully support AB 217 and ditto the previous comments as well.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Flor Diaz, Flordiaz. I was born and raised here in Las Vegas, and I am the youth organizer with Make the Road Nevada. I attended CCSD schools basically my entire life, and I'm a proud recent graduate of Desert Pines High School. It pains me that I have to stand here today and defend my fellow peers. No student should be afraid to go to school out of fear that they might be taken away from ICE. Please keep in mind that our children have the right to an education and the right to live and learn without fear. Today, I ask you to join me in standing for what's right. Let's take a meaningful step towards ensuring that every child, regardless of their background, can access an education free from fear. Please vote yes on AB 217. Thank you.
Is there anybody else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support of AB 217? I do not see anybody else in Las Vegas. I guess it's AVH now, not BPS. AVH, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in support of AB 217?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in support of AB 217, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Please go ahead, caller. Your line is unmuted.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. For the record, Matilda Miller, that's Mathilda Miller, Government Relations Director of Native Voters Alliance Nevada. We are in support of AB 217. I echo the sentiments of my colleagues, but I want to underscore this. We consistently hear talk about putting families first, protecting children, and giving every kid a fair shot. If those words really mean anything, then supporting this bill isn't just a right choice, it's the only choice. At the end of the day, this is about one simple question: do we protect kids or do we let fear win? We urge you to stand on the right side of this moment, support this bill, let Nevada's children walk into their classrooms thinking about their future, not fearing for it. Thank you.
AVH, next caller.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Paula Luna, Paulaluna, and I'm the Deputy Director of Battleborn Progress. We would like to ditto the support for AB 217. Thank you, Assemblymember Gonzalez, for protecting our students.
Next caller.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Denise Bolaños, Bolanos, and I'm the Associate Director of Return Strong Nevada, where we fight to dismantle systems of harm. The school-to-prison to deportation pipeline is one of these systems. And while historically we've advocated for people incarcerated in Nevada, ICE detention is just another prison. We care about children and their right to learn without fear. When schools are not safe, students are pushed into cycles of criminalization, detention, or they stop attending altogether. We must break that cycle by ensuring that schools remain places of learning and not surveillance. AB 217 is a crucial step in protecting our youth from unnecessary and harmful interactions with the carceral system. Please support this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Backus and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Andrea Kelly, Andreakelly. I am the president of Humboldt County Support Staff Organization. I come before you today to testify on Assembly Bill 217. Let's see, I am here today as the president of the Humboldt County Support Staff Organization and as the program coordinator for adult and correctional education. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you regarding AB 217, an immigration bill that has significant implications for our communities and the families we serve. In my role, I have the privilege of representing adult students working hard to better their lives and the lives of their families. They rely on our schools as a place of stability and support. The passage of AB 217 will not only shape their futures, but will also influence the strength and stability of our educational institutions and communities as a whole. I urge you to consider the potential unintended consequences of this bill. Schools should be places of inclusion and opportunity where all students can learn without fear. If AB 217 creates an environment of uncertainty for immigrant families, students may struggle to focus on their education, ultimately affecting their academic performance and emotional well-being. Additionally, we must recognize the broader impact on our communities. Families who feel threatened or unsupported are less likely to engage with schools, reducing the effectiveness of parental involvement, an essential factor in student success. I ask this committee to take a measured approach and ensure that AB 217 does not negatively impact students who depend on our schools for stability and growth. We must prioritize policies that promote inclusion, fairness, and economic stability rather than those that create division and uncertainty. I urge you to consider amendments that protect students, support families, and uphold the values that make our communities strong. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and classify that testimony as opposition because they did suggest an amendment. So under our committee rules, that is an amendment. So I'm putting that under opposition. I'll take one last caller in support to make up for that. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed. Please make sure you state and spell your name.
No worries. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Salma Garcia Hernandez. For the record, that's SALMAGarciaHernandez. I am a mother, wife, and active community member in Assembly District 3. I am calling in strong support of Assembly Bill 217. As an immigrant, I know what it's like to leave for school wondering if my family would still be home when I returned. But I never feared being detained at school myself. Today, our children carry this burden. They sit in classrooms worried about ICE agents appearing at their school gates. As a mother whose child will soon enter CCSD, I cannot accept a reality where students are torn from their desks and classmates. Chair and committee members, I urge you to support AB 217. This isn't just about policy. It's about protecting our children's basic right to learn without fear. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and go to opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Tom Clark, T-O-M-C-L-A-R-K. I represent the Nevada Association of School Boards, and we very much appreciate the removal of Section 2 of this particular piece of legislation, and I've been working with the sponsor. There's one piece that we still have concerns with, and that is making it a misdemeanor for an employee, a teacher, staff, who willfully participates or does this. I think we can clean up that language, get it to a place where the association can get the support. So we'll continue to work.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Do you know what penalty would be appropriate then?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Tom Clark. I think we're looking at the disciplinary procedures that would take place with any instructor, teacher, staff person who willfully does this type of activity outside of what would be state law, or, the district is going to follow the law that's put forward. And if they break that law, or if they do something that's against the policy of the district. And so that's the debate that they're having currently. And so hopefully we can come to some level, and if not, I'll let the sponsor know.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other opposition here in Carson City, so we'll go to Las Vegas. Is there any opposition for AB 217? I do not see any. BPS, is there anyone on the line? I apologize. AVH, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition to AB 217?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 217, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller, you may go ahead now.
Hi, my name is Lolly Garcia, and I would like to support AB 217.
I apologize. We are already concluded support of this piece of legislation. Please submit your written remarks. AVH, we can go ahead and go to the next caller. At this time, as a reminder, we are only taking opposition. We have reached our maximum time limit of 30 minutes of support, but we encourage you to reach out to the committee. You can email myself or the committee manager, and we will make sure that that's posted on Nellis and sent out to the committee as well. Please go to the next caller.
Chair, the public line is open and working, and there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and go to neutral. Is there anybody here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to AB 217?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przynski, MaryPierczynski. I should spell that out, shouldn't I? And I'm representing the Nevada Association of School Superintendents. And at this time, we're in the neutral position. FERPA provides student information, and districts have policies that address the issue focused on in this bill. So the bill appears to codify what's already happening in district policies. We're in the neutral position on this because we do have concerns about Section 1, Sub 3, which states any person who knowingly and willfully violates the provisions of this section is guilty of a misdemeanor. Currently, if a school policy is violated, it is a policy violation and dealt with as such in the district. It's not considered a misdemeanor. So we hope to continue working with the bill sponsor to satisfy our concerns about this particular part of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize. I do have to classify those remarks as opposition because they expressed a concern over the piece of legislation under our committee rules. Thank you. I don't see anybody else here in Carson City. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral to AB 217? I do not see anybody. AVH, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in neutral to AB 217?
If you'd like to testify in neutral for AB 217, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller, please press star 9 to unmute your line. One moment, please, Chair.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 044, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and begin when ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Desiree Smith, DESIREESMITH. I've grown up in North Las Vegas and attended CCSD. I'm a community organizer that supports the youth in Las Vegas. And I just want to say I was in full support of this bill before they removed Section 2. And now I feel like I'm more of a neutral stance. Although I do support Section 1, and I believe it's crucial that the state protects all youth, no matter their immigration status. I do believe that when we're talking about terrorizing students, that Section 2 does need to stay. Attending Legacy High School, I witnessed firsthand how school police would often resort to excessive force, like macing all students under the guise of de-escalation. However, true de-escalation means embracing restorative justice programs, offering resources both inside and outside of schools, and focusing more on rehabilitation than on punitive measures. And also, for the record, as we collectively think about improving safety for students and creating more effective schools, I do encourage lawmakers and our legislators to consider limiting the contact between police, school police, and students, period. We must also consider the distress and psychological, the mental health that these kids are going through when they go to school every day and face that school police presence. In 2023, it is said that over 7,000 referrals of kids were sent to the juvenile justice system, and these referrals are mostly made by law enforcement. So this troubling trend from school to prison pipelines calls for serious action. And if we're going to talk about student safety and creating safe spaces, we cannot ignore just the overall presence of police or law enforcement authorities on campus. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and classify your testimony as opposition because you requested a change with a piece of legislation and we had not yet reached our 30 minutes of opposition. So I'll put that statement in opposition. Thank you. BPS, is there anyone on the lines to testify in neutral? As a reminder, neutral is no position, no requested amendment, no issues with the bill. You are just providing background information generally.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in neutral, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Please go ahead, caller. Caller with the phone number ending in 304, your line is open.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Jim DeGraffenreid, JIM-DEGRAFFENREID. I am Nevada's Republican National Committee man. I was unsure as to whether we should be in neutral or opposition, and I apologize. It sounds like we should be in opposition. We were pleased to see Section 2 removed from the bill. We believe that Section 1 followed existing laws and procedures and so was unnecessary, but we do also have concerns over Section 3 with the misdemeanor. And so if that makes us opposition, please reclassify us appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll classify that as opposition. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Chair. There are no other callers on the line at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll go ahead and invite the Assembly member and the bill, any other bill presenters for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Committee, for hearing this important piece of legislation. I definitely look forward to working with stakeholders to get them into support or neutral and to address those concerns. Obviously, we don't want to be, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on AB 217. We will move on to the last item on the agenda, which is public comment. If you're wishing to testify in public comment here in Carson City or in Las Vegas, please go ahead and approach the stand. Each person has 2 minutes to provide testimony. Public comment may be submitted to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. Is there anyone wishing to give public comment here in Las Vegas? Please begin when you're ready. Or I apologize. We are in Carson City. Please begin when you're ready.
John Eppolito. You can find us and our public comments this session on Facebook at Protect Nevada Children. Class Dojo is free behavior modification software. Their website states, quote, loved by more than 45 million students and parents, free for teachers forever, and, quote, over 154,000 families in Nevada rely on Class Dojo. Yes, Class Dojo is free for teachers and schools, and they are paid with students' most sensitive behavior data. New York Times, privacy concerns with Class Dojo and other tracking apps for school children. Quote, Class Dojo is being adopted without sufficiently considering the ramifications for data privacy and fairness, like where and how the data may eventually be used, end quote. A mother in Reno contacted me about her school's use of Class Dojo. She didn't want Class Dojo or their partners to have her child's sensitive behavior data. She was told that was the school's official method for communication. She may have removed her child from school. London School of Economics. Class Dojo poses data collection concerns for parents. National Review. Stop mental health data mining our kids. Quote, Class Dojo collects intimate behavioral data and long-term psychological profiles, end quote. I don't know if Class Dojo is creating psychological profiles on Nevada students, but neither do school district officials. A year before Edmodo sold to the Chinese, they had a massive data breach affecting most students using the software. Is this the future of Class Dojo? John Eppolito, ProtectNevadaChildren.org.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else here in Carson City. I'll go ahead and go to Las Vegas. Please begin when you're ready.
Doug Unger, D-O-U-G, U-N-G-E-R, Nevada Faculty Alliance. Thank you, Chairs Torres Fawcett and De Silva and members of the committee for the good work you're doing today. Regarding the state of higher education in Nevada, the Chancellor's presentation is welcome and positive. But I want to remind this committee that our faculty report very anxious states of uncertainty over the future of the system, given new mandates and policies from the federal regime. Any assistance from this legislature to help us stay on course with research and policies vital to our state's economic development and to teach and support our students will be most appreciated. I'm here to talk about campus safety. I served on the Chancellor's ad hoc committee on safety and security for more than a year following the December 6, 2023 mass shooting on the UNLV campus that murdered 3 of our faculty, 2 of whom I knew personally and think about every day. 6 of 15 recommendations approved by the Board of Regents, and some of which were shared with you by Chief James, came from the subcommittee I chaired. So I won't go over the infrastructure needs, but we are in desperate need of infrastructure improvements. There is a great difference in infrastructure between North and South, and particularly our institutions in the South, I believe, are exposed. Also, Chief James did not mention something that we looked at in our committee, and that is to add numbers of campus police officers and support staff so that what happened on December 6th doesn't happen again. And we have one campus flooded with police officers while we leave CSN and NSU or any of our other campuses unprotected. All this is going to require prioritizing safety by NSHE and the legislature. And I do have to say that 15 months later, after December 6th, with all due respect to NSHE, the Chancellor, and the system, and I do respect them and work with them, frequently and admire their leadership, safety does not yet seem a priority on the UNLV campus. We feel it viscerally.
Thank you for your testimony, Dr. Unger.
With December 6th in mind. So thank you for making campus safety a priority this session. Thank you.
Thank you, and our condolences to your colleagues that were lost on that day. At this time, do I have anybody else wishing to testify in public comment in Las Vegas? I do not believe I see anyone. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in public comment?
If you'd like to provide public comment, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Public line is open and working, Chair. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from committee members before we adjourn? Committee members, I want you to be aware that I expect another long hearing this upcoming Thursday, so please make sure you check your bills and see any amendments. I'm working with the bill sponsors to make sure amendments are in soon, but please make sure that you're aware if there's any amendments as well. Seeing no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned.